in that way to do it also is to look into data, right? Both internal data and also benchmarking against the market, right? Across all the stages of the candidate journey. Right, so you're starting from recruitment, so before people even join, like how are you creating an inclusive and diverse recruitment strategy? And then obviously to retention, to onboarding, to policies, and like, etc. Right?
In the modern world, impactful and prolific innovation is increasingly critical to company success. Some companies are learning that lack of diversity and inclusion in their rank is inhibiting innovation. You are surely seen the headlines and statistics around the lack of diversity and inclusion in tech. On the other side of the coin, there are also companies discovering that one benefit of becoming more inclusively organization is corresponding improvement in the ability to quick leverage and the diverse perspective and experience of each member of the workforce to innovate new product and user experience. Hello and welcome to the Honest Talk by Freak Folks. I'm Harsh Pandey. For this particular session, our guest will be Ms. Lynette Pathy, ma'am. She has over 12 years of experience in the marketing and employee engagement and a strong passion for well-being and culture building in the workplace. In her current role as lead organizations and people development at foodpanda, she is focused on driving workplace strategies and initiatives to ensure employee well-being. A strong believer in the strength of diverse workflows, she also runs inclusion and diversity programs across the organization. Through Girls in Tech Singapore, she is motivated to empower girls and women and men as well, to promote their voices and drive equality in STEM. And she will be joining us today all the way from Singapore. So first of all, ma'am, I welcome you in this session. Thank you so much for joining and actually agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this chat.
Thank you, ma'am. It's our pleasure. So moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is people power, why diversity and inclusion is the secret to innovation. Boardroom around the world are abuzz with the talk of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, augmented reality, and automation. Today, innovation is not about bits and bytes, which we previously hear. It's about lives and livelihoods. Ma'am, my very first request to you is please explain to our viewers actually the importance of diversity and inclusion. Why is it a secret to innovation?
Great question. So for me, like diversity really is like the what, right? What makes you you, right? Is it your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, everything, like all the characteristics that make a person that person, right? Like, yeah. And then inclusion is really the how. How do you create like an inclusive culture, or how do you make sure people feel welcomed, included in every aspect, right? So when it comes to innovation, diversity is really not just about the physical traits, right? Just about your gender, where you're from, ethnicity-wise, what's your sexual orientation, et cetera, right? So it's much, much broader than that, right? So of course, I have to say, those traits do play a huge role in how people draw inspiration for ideas, right? Like because of your certain background, certain cultures, like that's where they get inspiration, right? But it's really also about embracing the diversity in cognitive thinking, perspectives, and leveraging different points of view, right? And of course, that's the first step, right? Creating this culture of inclusion and psychological safety, where you provide a space for people to really be who they are, right? And bring them whole selves and authentic selves to the company, right? And you get to listen to their views and their opinions. Obviously, this helps to attract and retain an engaged workforce, and where people are really able to challenge the status quo, bringing in new ideas, and of course, in that way, driving innovation in the business. So that I think is why diversity and inclusion is really, really key to innovation.
Indeed, ma'am. Actually, I think you have very beautifully explained, and I'm sure the people those who are watching this session, they are going to understand its importance. And ma'am, my next question to you is, although the merit of diversity and inclusion are clear, as you have explained, so question becomes, what's less obvious is how to build an organization that genuinely nurtures them. So my question to you is how to build a diverse and inclusive organization? In your opinion, what are the important factors need to be considered?
Wow, that's a big question. I think there's definitely, I think you'd start with awareness, and looking into maybe some of the areas that need improvement in the organization, whether it's around gender equality, or pay equality, I think acknowledging those gaps and then committing actions to resolving them is really important, right? Of course, buy-in from the leadership team is super important, so to really ensure that your organization is really like walking the walk and talking the talk, so that it's not just talking, that we're actually putting, strategy and ideas into action, right? And in that way to do it also is to look into data, right? Both internal data and also benchmarking against the market, right? Across all the stages of the candidate journey, right? So you're starting from recruitment. So before people even join, like how are you creating an inclusive and diverse recruitment strategy? And then obviously to retention, to onboarding, to policies and like, etc. right? So for example, in recruitment, reducing bias by focusing on skills versus, did they come from Harvard or did they come from a local university, right? Like what skills are they bringing to the table, right? And then obviously tracking, like again, data, coming into data, tracking the hiring mix, right? Are there any gaps? Are you hiring, you realize for this some certain teams that you're hiring more women than men or men than women, and of course training managers and teams on how to really tackle the unconscious bias, to be able to make best hires with complementing skills, right? Not just people who are just like me. For example, I'm not going to hire someone just like me, but I want to hire someone who complements my skills, right? And can bring a lot more diversity to the table. And of course, looking into pay parity, inclusive policies for team members, making sure your policies, look into all your policies and how can you make it more inclusive, right? Making sure obviously with even performance management and compensation reviews, that there are no biases, and we're again looking into data to make sure that, there's no bias, right? Also, a good way is to look at, and not to forget, is to look at attrition data, right? Okay. So just because someone's left doesn't mean they're any less important. So looking into the attrition data, looking into exit interviews, to see, are there any patterns, are there more women leaving for some reason, or, are there some groups, like ethnic groups leaving for some reason? So really just look at if there is a pattern. That's also a way to obviously create avenues for you to look into and then address if need. So I think overall, building a diverse and inclusive organization requires the commitment to every single stage of the candidate journey, right? So not just sort of, hey, I've done this event for International Women's Day or Pride Month, and then I'm inclusive, right? It's actually really diving into strategy at every stage of the funnel.
Indeed, ma'am. Actually, I think you have very beautifully explained, and you have stressed on the part of data. So I think we all need to understand, and this is something which we need to learn. And I'm very much impressed from this answer, ma'am. And my next question to you is, one question come here is that, but just getting great talent is the door isn't enough. Once they are in, it's the incumbent of you to make them feel like they belong. If you succeed, they will be their best selves, do their best work, and they will be likely more loyal, which will make the entire room more innovative and more productive. But the question arises, how to do this? So I want to know your opinion. I want to know your thoughts. What are the efforts we can practice inside the organization to make the people from the diverse background like they feel like they belong?
I think we need to acknowledge that there's really no one size fits all approach, right? To diversity and inclusion. I think a personalized approach to really understanding your employees is important, right? To create this culture of inclusion and the environment of psychological safety, what I spoke about before, is really helps us to understand what your employees need, right? Employees are really not looking for companies to be perfect, right? But they want to see that they're always looking to do better and be better in everything, right? So, in some ways you could do this is obviously regular anonymous feedback cycles, where you monitor how some of your employees feel and what they're looking for. And then you can also to take this feedback, you can create and adjust existing policies drive other changes, launch new initiatives, such as like community building within the organization, to create really that sense of belonging, to make them happy at work, right? And I think all in all, listening is super important, and and treat your teams with respect. And I think that definitely goes a long way into helping people feel like they belong.
Exactly. And ma'am, one question also I want you to discuss. Actually, the business world has changed dramatically over the last few decades, and now we live in a connected society where the change can be fast-paced, constant, and unpredictable. Rapid advance in technology have created an environment where the internet, smartphones, social media are ubiquitous, and the 2008 global financial crisis and this 2020-2019 corona pandemic have increased the sense of turbulence, danger, and unpredictability in the certain areas. So my question to you is, what do you feel, in your opinion, what are the critical skills required to excel in this fast-paced changing world?
I think we have been changing definitely over the last few decades. Definitely agree with that. I think skills are really important. Really, is really to be adaptable, right? To be really flexible, to be agile, and to be able to rise to the challenges, right? That's thrown constantly at everyone. And one of my favorite learnings, actually, from one of the a leader I've worked with, is to strive for progression, not perfection, right? So really, knowledge and mindsets, they really have an expiration date, right? Especially in this fast-paced changing world. So really thinking with a progressive mindset is key to continual improvement, and being able to tackle, again, the fast-paced world we're in. I've also personally learned on a bit of a softer side, balancing work and life is a skill in itself, especially with everyone who's like overworked and there's so much to balance, every day. I think, so, way, when everything's changing and evolving so quickly. So I think those few are probably the most important for me personally.
Indeed, ma'am. And one question which also I want you to discuss, do you feel that the companies that have visionaries who carry large section of the organizations along with them often succeed in deriving or through change better than companies that are bureaucratic or who organizational artists have become clogged due to the inertia and slowness to adapt to the new marketplace?
Like I said before, adaptability and flexibility are really crucial to dealing with changes, especially fast-moving changes in fast-moving industries. However, also to drive change, you do need a balance of both, these big picture visionaries and those who really have the eye on the details and stakeholder management. So I think they're definitely a good mix, but definitely I do agree that, for organizations to move through some of these quick changes, companies that are more agile will definitely succeed a lot quicker than those who are not.
Okay, this was really a great answer. And ma'am, I can say there's a lot more to learn from you, but today I don't think there is, means I don't want to take too much of your time. So moving to my last question of this session, or rather it's a kind of a request to you, is what will be one piece of advice would you like to give to viewers, those who are watching this session, if you have?
I think definitely keep an open mind, right?
Okay.
Don't block off, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Everybody's human. Everybody
Right.
is same. We're all equal. So I think when it comes to any certain topics that you might not agree with, I think just keep an open mind, talk, learn, always learn from someone else that maybe is different to you. And I think that really will open your perspective on things.
Indeed, ma'am. This was really a great message, I must say. And thank you so much for joining and giving your important time. It was a kind of a healthy conversation with you over the topic, and we look forward to conduct more sessions with you in future. I truly enjoyed this, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside, I'm alone.